social de-evolution appears complete. Typical human behavior is now entirely absent. If we're not careful, if we stay on this lockdown, stay at home, distance yourself from one another, that's the end of human behavior, because we were meant for communion. We're not meant to live in isolation and in fear.
Yeah. Hey everyone, Father Steve with you, and
Michelle Piccolo
for another episode of Saints, Sinners, and Cinema. I'm the saint.
I'm the sinner now.
And we're going to do another episode of reviewing. It's really our first episode of our very first movie that we thought about. And so what are we going to review?
We're going to review I Am Legend.
I Am Legend. Who stars in it?
Will Smith.
Will Smith, and like a big old cast, an ensemble of like 15, 16 other stars?
No, it's just him and his dog for the first half of the movie.
Kind of like Lassie, just a boy and his dog. No.
Well, it's apocalyptic, that's the theme.
Okay.
End of the world type of situation. This Dr. Alice Crippen has discovered the cure for cancer. Turns out it's actually a virus that kills off 90% of the population.
Wow, interesting. As we were sitting and talking about the very first movie that we were going to review, we came down to say what would be good for us to review during this time of Corona, is where COVID-19 is we're rolling this out. And so there's so much fear and anxiety around people in the end times, which is really something to pull out from this movie.
Right.
I think everyone just relates with this, and we see ourselves even now at this time where we were hit with this, and everyone has gone, through the COVID roller coaster, and wherever we're at on that scale, we can relate to this in some sense. And in I Am Legend, maybe we can just talk a little bit about, how the context of the movie and how it goes.
Yeah, Dr. Alice Crippen, she's this doctor that comes up with this cure for cancer, but obviously it turns out to be terrible and ends up killing and turning 90% of the population, I believe is what they said, into what is called dark seekers.
Yeah.
The light kills them, I know that much. So they stay in the dark, so it's kind of like vampire-ish, but they're very human. I mean, they're human in their form, but they're almost like human animals.
Yeah.
And they seek out people to eat them, like they're looking for human flesh. And Dr. Robert Neville is of the 1% of the human population that is immune from this.
But he thinks he is the last man alive on Earth.
Yeah, and he puts out a radio transmission, and the message is, you are not alone. Like, I'm here. So he's like beckoning to anybody, because his only companion, like I said, is his dog.
But my favorite thing that comes out throughout the whole movie is friendship. So you said that Will Smith is the only one in the movie. Right. So how is friendship the great theme? Who's his best friend?
Well, his dog.
His dog, Sam.
I mean, he talks to the dog, he scolds her, it's a female dog, we don't
challenges her.
Yeah, and
Sam, get back here, Sam.
There's no one around, right? There's not one living soul around. No. So, but what you see him start talking to somebody, you're like, who is he talking to? And you realize he's talking to mannequins. He set them up and he names them.
So he's having these conversations, these dialogues with these mannequins, and it just shows the depravity and the loneliness of humanity without people
to talk to.
And again, this relates back to COVID, because we're seeing how we as men and women, how we as brothers and sisters in the Lord, how we as humanity, how we're starved for interaction with people. We're made for communion.
Right. He gets into a moment of deep despair, let's put it that way, and he goes out to the pier and he basically is waiting to die.
Yeah, he wants to kill himself.
Yeah, and at the last minute, this woman and her son show up and save his life.
Yeah.
And so...
Because they heard the message.
They heard the radio transmission. And there's a conversation that Anna, her name is Anna, she has with Dr. Robert Neville and says, I heard God. God told me to come here. And
his response is, there is no God.
He gets very angry. He has like a really visceral reaction. He said, everybody that we have ever loved is dead. But what she tells him in between there is, the world is quiet now. You have to listen. And he's just clearly not listening at that point.
Just even saying that now brings me back to that 1 Kings. Elijah is trying to escape, and the fire comes and God is not in the fire. The earthquake comes and God is not in the earthquake, but in the soft, silent breeze, the whisper, God is present. And so here's Will Smith's character, Robert Neville, and because he's a scientist, and he's trying to save humanity, sending out the beacon, and now this despair hits an all-time low. He says there is no God, but then his companion, his new companion, Anna, says, listen to the silence.
Yeah, he said, be quiet, yeah. So I had read a review from Christopher West. He wrote a book called T.O.B. at the Movies. He quotes, and he's talking about Pope John Paul II, and this quote is very interesting. He says, the idea of dark seekers feeding on the flesh of other human beings is not that far off from the many horrid forms of violence and sexual abuse that are sweeping through our pornified culture like a virus. We're abusing one another instead of loving one another. We are hurting as a people, and we just keep hurting each other. We are profoundly sick, not just with the virus, like we're sick as, because we're sick with sin, right? Just a cursory knowledge of what's happening today with sex trafficking and internet pornography leads a person to conclude, as Dr. Neville does, social de-evolution appears complete. Typical human behavior is now entirely absent.
Wow.
And I feel like that is just so, if we're not careful, if we stay on this, lockdown, stay at home, distance yourself from one another, that's the end of human behavior, because we were meant for communion. We're not meant to live in isolation and in fear.
Yeah, and you could just even take that into a whole nother step also, and just understanding the virus of sin, the virus of usury, of just using each other just to the end itself. We become these vampire, zombified, horrific creatures, and we seek to attack each other. These beings, these horrific beings, they actually have reason, and they actually have some knowledge.
Right.
So they are still human in many respects. They're a dead human being, which is to say, that's who we are in death, in sin. We are in mortal sin. We're walking dead. Unless we're returning back to Jesus Christ and begging for forgiveness, unless we're coming back to Him in confession, we're just zombie, vampire,
dark
walking
seekers.
dead, dark seekers. And so we're just on the lurch, going for attack. And so I think this movie, it really is a really great movie. How many stars? How are we going to rate movies? How many Bibles?
I don't know. How many chalices?
How many rosaries would you give it? I personally would give it four crosses, we'll say.
Oh, I like that.
We just came up with this. It's the first movie review. So let us know if you've seen I Am Legend. So know of our prayers, pray for us, and we'll continue to have some fun doing this, okay? God bless you.